All right. So welcome, everyone. This is the New York iMapInvasives monthly webinar series. It's the first one since June, so it's great to have you all here with us. I believe you are all muted, and we'll ask you to remain muted for the presentation portion. But you can enter comments into the chat box at any time, and there will be time at the end for questions if you want to turn on your mics then. And FYI, we are recording this presentation for future reference. So today's topic is using iMapInvasives for end-of-season reports. And we have Jennifer Dean, invasive species biologist, and myself, Mitchell O'Neill, end-user support specialist, as the presenters. And we are both with the New York Natural Heritage Program, and we both work on the invasive species database. And so, if anyone wants to introduce themselves, I put some prompts up on the slide, so you can enter your name and organization, if applicable, into the chat box, and something that you want to learn how to do in IMAP, if you're interested. And we may get to some of those during the presentation. We might have time to address some in the questions at the end, and from there, it'll also help me come up with other things we can help you out with in future trainings. And so Jen and I are both with the New York Natural Heritage Program. We are most well known for rare species work and biodiversity data in New York State. We're a partnership between New York State DEC and CDESF. But since invasive species have such an impact on biodiversity, we also recognize the importance of invasive species work, so the Invasive Species Database Program is one part of the New York Natural Heritage Program. And we work on a number of projects, the most well-known one being iMapInvasives, but we also work on other projects with the Boat Stewards Program and with constructing models to help managers prioritize their management efforts. And so I think at least many of you are familiar with iMapInvasives, but for anyone new, it's used in several jurisdictions across North America, but in New York, it's the centralized invasive species database to support PRISM, state agencies, and other partners working on invasive species issues. And so iMapInvasives provides species. Can everyone make sure your mics are muted? Sorry about that, everyone. So iMapInvasives provides species distributions and reports, early detection alerts, web map services, and tracking. It allows you to track and control. It allows you to track, control efforts and results, and we'll be talking about some of those in more detail later on. So the agenda for today is to teach you how to use iMapInvasives for end-of-season reports. So you've all been doing field work this summer, and there's a bunch of data in iMapInvasives, so how can you use that data and display that data? We're going to start with how to make maps in iMapInvasives, and I'll be discussing that. And then we're also going to discuss data analysis and summaries. So Jennifer Dean is going to talk about the export and report tool. And then I'll give a brief overview of web map services, and then we will get to questions. So we'll start with making maps in iMapInvasives. And before I get too far into it, I want to mention the importance of figuring out the best way that you can take screenshots on your computer. It'll vary from PC to Mac, and it even varies within PCs. In general, you can take full screen screenshots, also known as print screen, or you can take a screenshot of part of the screen. So with full screen, you take an image of your entire computer monitor, essentially, and it brings that into your clipboard, which means that you can paste it into a document. And so if you have the full screen, you'll have to crop it. And if you do part of the screen, you wouldn't have to crop it. I think a lot of people find the print screen easiest because you can just take the full screen and then crop it to the extent you're interested in at any point. So for PCs, you do that by using the print screen buttons, and it varies where that is from computer to computer. And so once you press that print screen button, you can go into a Word document or a PowerPoint, and you can right-click paste, or you can Control-V, and the image will appear there, and you can crop it. And on Macs, instead of using a print screen button, you hold Command, Shift, and 3, and then it will also be an image that you can paste into a document. And so this is the way that you can get a map that you make on the online interface into a document. And so now I mentioned the end goal of getting a screenshot. The next step is to go into the iMapInvasives interface and make the map. So this involves two main tools in the online interface of iMapInvasives. One of them being the filter tool, where you can filter which record you're looking at. So you can do that by species, by who reported the invasive, by the organization and project. And then the other main tool is the geographic layers. So you can switch the base maps, turn the layers on and off, so that would be like present versus not detected. You can add in geography boundaries like counties, conservation lands, and you can create distribution by geography maps for the data you've filtered on. And you can add layers from the web, and you can also change transparencies within the geographic layers. And so all that is done on the online interface. So I will switch to a live demo soon. But to give you a brief overview of what is going on in the online interface, so this is what it looks like. On the top left is the main menu. On the left side is the navigation tools that you use to get to the part of the United States that you're interested in. And then at the top are the action tools. So you'll notice the third button is the filter records tool. So that will be very useful for making maps. And then the rightmost button of the action tools says close layers. So by default, the layers are open, and that's why you can see the white box all the way to the right, which has all the geographic layers. So we'll mostly be focusing on the geographic layers and the filter records tool. And now I will share my internet browser to show you the online interface. All right. So the easiest way to get to the online interface is going to the iMapInvasives.org website. Type that into your browser. I will mention that we are updating the website currently. So when you log in, when you visit the website next week, it will look different, but all of the content will be there. So this login button will still be there right at the top right corner, and this is a good way to get to the iMapInvasives online interface. So if you click that, it brings you to the login. If you have an account, you log in up here at the top. If you don't have an account, you can sign up in this white box. And so once you're logged in, you will get to this screen. There will be a pop-up. So in this case, the website was updated, I think, about 2 weeks ago. So once you read the message and are up to date, then you can close it out. It always has this clear your cache suggestion. So when there are updates, it is always a good idea to clear your cache so that the website works the best that it can. I'll exit that out. And so here we are in the map interface. So the first thing I'm going to do is to zoom into New York. You can use these zoom in and drag tools. I'll zoom in using the plus and then drag on the screen. I also use shift and click, which works at least on PCs, to draw a box around somewhere and get closer to it. All right, so now we're looking at New York. And one of the first things I'll do is go to change base map. So if you wanted to look at a specific, like a specific treatment site or something with satellite view might be useful to see the details of what's going on the ground. But for these broader scale maps, I usually use, when I'm displaying like the map at a broad scale, I like to use this light gray map because it's pretty plain and it won't get in the way of the data that you're trying to display. And also it will load faster for screen share. And then one important thing to always look at when you start looking at the map is this layers on off. So by default, you're looking at confirmed and unconfirmed present species hexes. So these hexagons indicate species that are present. If you wanted to see not detected species, you have to toggle that on. And same goes for treatments and other data types. And when you toggle layers on, they appear in this legend down here if you're ever not sure what color is referring to what data type. You can always look at the legend at the bottom. And for now, I will just turn the layers off because right now it is just showing all of the data in the database. And later on, I will show you how to filter it so that I can show just the data you're interested in viewing. But while I'm in these layers, I wanted to also show you these geographic map layers. So this is where you turn on boundaries. Like if you wanted your county boundaries, you could put those in. And I also want to point out these regional management partnerships. So in New York, these are referring to the prisms. So if you want the prism boundaries, you can toggle that on. All right, so as I was mentioning, it's showing a ton of data right now. You wouldn't really need something like this for a presentation or a report. You would typically be interested in a certain species or an organization or just your organizational data. So I'm going to go into the filter records tool. There are many attributes that you can filter on. One easy thing right away is to filter on your own records if you just wanted to see the records you entered. You could also enter in names, so you could enter in your staff names, for example. You can enter in a species name or multiple species names here. One thing I recommend is to switch to, there's this toggle below species name, so switch to New York species. So instead of the full network list for the IMAP network, this is the species list of species that are tracked in New York in iMapInvasives. So you can type in a species here. And it's very important to type and then select one. So if I type hemlock wrong and then press enter, this would result in no species, but there certainly are hemlock oleodelgid records in New York. You just have to make sure you select it from the list. If you don't select the species, there are some other species-related attributes you can filter on. So, for instance, if you're doing a map of aquatic invasive species, you could filter on just aquatics, or you could even add in semi-aquatic, but that way all of the terrestrial species surrounding the lakes you're looking at wouldn't get in the way. And likewise, you can also filter on kingdoms, so animals, bacteria, fungi, plants, protists. And you can also filter on genus. And if you are interested in a specific set of dates, so say you want to just do this field season or a certain quarter, you can enter a date range up here. So you can enter a date where you only want the records after that, or before that, or both. You just enter those in. You can select from the calendar, or you can just enter them in using your keyboard. And so organizations and projects are a very useful tool for grouping your data. One of the benefits is that you can filter on them. So if your organization is active in IMAP and all the members of the organization tag their records with your organization, you can very easily just select your organization out of here. The default is just the entire organization list. You can view any organization, but you could also use this toggle here to just get the short list of your organization, so you don't have to scroll through. And then projects work very much the same way. And if you have any questions about those, you can, about organizations and projects, you can email us at iMapInvasives@dec.gov. And so, as an example, I'm interested in looking at the hemlock woolly belgian data. So as an example, I'm going to try to make a map for that species for its distribution in New York State. So I'll type in hemlock woolly belgian, and I'll type in New York just because I'm only looking at New York data right now, and hit apply filter. And note that if you are ever unhappy with your filter and you want all the data again, you can always press this clear filter button and it will go back to the original. So I filtered on hemlock woolly belgian data, and so now I'm going to choose which data layers I want to see. So we almost always want to look at the confirmed and the presence data. I'll note that this first layer up here, when you're zoomed out, there are hexagons that include the confirmed and unconfirmed presence data. If I zoom in, they will break out into, zoom in, there we go. The hexagons break out into these confirmed points. So out here, they're hexagons. And there's all these areas where there's no records, but I know that there's been a lot of work across the state surveying areas for hemlock woolly belgian, even where it's not known yet. So I'll turn on these not detected records to see where those are. And one thing I want to mention that I think is easy to forget about is that these layers can all be, their transparencies can be adjusted. So say I want the orange to stand out more, I press this arrow button on the side and I reduce the transparency so that it becomes more vivid, or I can make it go in the background more. And if you don't like this text view, there is another option. So there's this add distribution layer option right above the layers. So I'm going to click that, and this will allow me to create distributions by geography. So right now it's set to county/district, and I'm filtered on HWA. So if I created this layer, it would shade in all of the counties where HWA is present, and in any color you want. But there are also other geography options. So if you're doing aquatic species, you might use water bodies or hydro basins. You could do it by prism. I often use the US topo clause. So I'm going to use that to show what that looks like. You decide whether you want approximate presences and unconfirmed presences to be included in your distribution map. Since I'm at this broad scale, I'll include the approximate presences. So these are records where we might not, the geographic coordinates might not have been reported exactly, but we at least know it's accurate to the town or some other geography. So I'll include those since we're at the zoomed out scale, but I won't include unconfirmed presences. This will only be confirmed in my distribution layer. And I'll pick a dark red. You can pick any color you want. And then you can hit this show the distribution layer button to show what you've just created. If I didn't like the color, I could go in and change it and then click show again. Once I'm happy with it, you can save it to your current session. So I'll I will label it HWA Dopo Quad distribution. And then I will save this distribution to layer on off. And so now once I go down back to layers on off, I don't think I clicked it. There we go. Layers on off. It comes up as distribution layers down here. So now it's something that I can toggle on and off. And now that I have this distribution layer representing the presences, I don't really need my hexes on anymore, so I'll turn those off. If I want not detected to stand out more, I can decrease the transparency, or if I want to focus on the presences, I can make it less apparent. But say you wanted these points so the distribution layer is covering up some of these points. If you wanted them to show through, you can also change the transparency of the distribution layer, so then they show through. And then again, you can add in boundaries, using this geography map layers within layers on off. So I'll put in the prism boundaries. All right. One other thing I'll quickly add is if you have a link to a web map service, so some geographic layer that you wish was in iMap but it's not there, you can actually add that in. So there is this add layer from URL. So you would paste the URL in here. I have one as an example. So if I paste this link for our prioritization comprehensive score, I can put that link in there and then add web layer. And if you're not really sure where these links would come from, I am going to include some links that you might commonly use in our help information on our website. You can add any web app service links there. I will get rid of that for now because that was just for show. I don't think we actually need that there. And so here's a map of the distribution of Hemwapili Delgid. Say I wanted this in a presentation or in a report. I can take a screenshot of my whole screen and then crop it to just the area with the map itself. And I'll show you what that could look like. So once you crop it, you might have something that looks like this. And a caption might help describe what this image is showing, but as you can see, there's no legends. You don't know what species is showing. You don't know what the source of this data is. Excuse my cat, everyone. So there's like obviously some editing that would need to happen to try to get this presentable and have the proper sources and everything. And I did see one question in the chat box about obscuring those buttons. In general, no, you just have to kind of crop around them, but you can close the layers by clicking the top right button. But we have tried to do some of the legwork for you so that you won't have to do all the editing every single time. So we're creating this map template. So this document will be on our website, shared with everyone, so that you can download this PowerPoint slide, and then when you take a screenshot, you can paste it in right here, and then we have the logo on the top right so that the source of the data is obvious. And then on the top left, we have this box where you can enter the species name and also the date you access the data. This is very important since this map will be static. If I make a map today, any observations that come in next week will not be on the map, so it's important to have the date listed. And then we also have started this legend builder. So you can select from these layers on the right which layers you're showing on your map and add them into the legend. And there's already some instructions on this document to guide you through. And in the interest of time, I think here's an example of what that might look like. So here's the data filtered on porcelainberry, and I've used the legend builder to add in the hexes. And so I saw some questions in the chat, but in the interest of time, I think we should move on to the reports and exports, but we can look at more questions at the end. So I will hand it over to Jennifer Dean now.
Great, thanks, Mitch. Good overview of how to make your maps for your reports, PowerPoint, and such. I'm going to be talking about exporting the data and using the new report functions that we have within iMap. And so these are all housed in that second to last button that's highlighted on Mitch's PowerPoint there, the export/report button. So even though it looks kind of plain, there's actually a lot of power in that little button. So when you click it, you will get this export report pop-up box. And that first thing that is circled there is the little toggle button. And you toggle back and forth between whether you want to export the data or you want to generate some type of summary report of the data. All right. And for both of these, can you push the next? There we go. For both of these, it's very important to remember that the output for either the exports or the reports are influenced by whether or not you have any filters on currently and which map layers you have on or off. And so I will be walking through some examples. And just keep in mind, I don't know how many times I've run documents in them. But I want to start with this, and I'll just walk you through a little bit of the background to it, and then I'll go over to share my screen, and I'll go over to the live site and show you a couple things. So one thing to keep in mind with data exporting is that there are data permissions built into iMap. It's a lot more open in terms of exporting data than the old system was. So we've gone into this new open data sharing model, which is awesome. All the confirmed non-confidential segments and not detected numbers are available for export by any logged in user. And then users and organizational admins can always export their own treatment and own unconfirmed segments. So keep that stuff in mind. And of course, you have to have the appropriate layers turned on. Okay, next. You have multiple options in the output type. A CSV, which will export as Excel, or if you have ArcGIS, you can set up a shapefile or GIS. There's also the option for web access to visual. Touch on briefly at the end. That's taking the live data. And Mitchell, can you hit next? And so those three outputs, those are the true exports. Those are limited to 10,000 records at a time. If you needed something bigger than that, you can always contact us or get into other data fields that are available in the export. Always contact us with text and data requests, or if you're just not sure what you can export. But you can also, utilize the cybernetic services, which is a live stream of the data pulled into your own GIS interface to really, customize it and pull up that quantity limit. All right, next. And another thing that's really big with both the exports and the reports that gives it a lot of power is that you have a lot of flexibility in how you select your geography that you want to focus on. For the exports, you can use your current map placement, so that's whatever is visible on your computer screen at that moment. Like if you zoom in a little bit, there's fewer records. If you zoom out, there's more, which is good to keep in mind when you're trying to stay within that 10,000 records limit for one export at a time. And you also have the option to use custom boundaries. And these are really cool. If you are using an existing boundary, then you can select from the layers that we have. Like we have system boundaries, we have county boundaries, we have water bodies, so those are useful. And we also have the ability to draw a polygon on the map itself. And so at this point, I'm going to take over control of the screen. Let's see here. And I'm going to show you my interface. Here's Mitchell.
Yes, I can.
Great. All right. So this is probably familiar to everyone. What I'm going to work on first are the exports. And so here we have the export report tool. And I'm going to toggle them so that it says export efforts at the top, or you guys can toggle back and forth between those. So I'm starting with the export. I can change my output type, so I'm going to do the CSV. And actually, I did want to filter on this, so I'm gonna close this out for a sec. I'm gonna go ahead and open up that filter so I can select a all aquatic species with the habitat right there. boundary for presentation. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and turn on the export type as my type there, the CSV. And since I now have a filter on with just aquatics, it will ask me if I want to use that filter. Do I want to ignore the filter? So now I don't want to ignore it, and that's a double negative. But if this is a helpful reminder that I do have a filter on, so if I wanted to ignore the filter, just look at everything. So yes. I'm going to click no. And then boundary is how I'm defining my area. So if I went back to where I toggled, I could use the current map extent, but that would definitely put me over that 10,000 left and right. And I want to be a little more focused on that. So I'm going to toggle that so that I can create a boundary. So the next thing I need to do is actually define or select my boundary area. So a couple options I have at this point. I can, number one, the first thing is I can just start clicking on the map and draw a polygon. And so if I get back to my boundary area that I'm interested in exporting, I could add a buffer set. So I could say, let me add a kilometer, 1,000 meters ArcGIS, but if you're like me, like I said, I am not a GIS person, so I'm very happy that, I can do all this within the iMap interface. All right, and so I'm going to go through each of these kind of increasing complexity. Starting with ones I think are, going to be more commonly used. And one thing to keep in mind when you're running these reports, they are really doing a lot of calculations on the data within iMapInvasives. We have a lot of, over the 200,000 records for presence alone, and then segments and undetected and so forth. But starting at the top, I'll just go through these quickly on this slide, and then I'll go back to sharing my screen and I'll actually go walking through each of these reports. All right, so the species list by geography, and as Sam had asked in the chat box earlier, there was a water body report that looks at all the species within my water body, and this is how you would do it. Or, basically I'm creating a species list for whatever geography you are interested in. It might be your prism, it might be your species. So it's a way to get exclusive species list. And you can do this for the presence, undetected, and the treatment method, which is really great. Let's see, the approaching region list, the approaching region report is a way to create a list of species that are not found in the area you implemented, but are found at the door, so to speak, that they're within a specified buffer distance away from it. So say if you take Albany County and you want to know everything that's not in Albany County, but is within a 25-mile radius around it or buffer around it, that's how you would run this report. The affected area report calculates the area covered by a species within a selected area in a selected time frame. If you want to know how much area is covered by Japanese knotweed within my state.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to start with the species list by geography. So, let's see here. I'm going to look at that function that I have running to the home report, and I do have a slide on species, so I'm actually going to keep that going. And I'm going to look at the layers that I have on and off. So right now I have the confirmed taxes. I'm going to turn on the unconfirmed data, the non-detected species, and the trees. So I'm going to go ahead and get the full today for the aquatic species there. So that's, I know what data now that I'm going to be running this report on. So I'm going to go to my export report tool, toggle the service report, and then select my species list by geography. One thing that's nice with each of these reports, there's this little show description, which gives you a more detailed explanation of what this report is calculating. Go ahead and hide that. You can give a name to your report, which will show up in the output that comes through. So I'm going to do an Albany County report. The next thing you need to do is before I kind of go step by step, because every little line on this report tool is important. So area, I need to define or select my map recorded in the database. And just because there's not a presence point that is standard enough, doesn't necessarily mean that it must be and has a standard data disclaimers that means your server access the entire time. So there you go. So this is a way that you could get a water body report. It gives you a lot of flexibility in that. Actually, so if I go back to this, I guess I can show real quick if I wanted water body instead of county district, I would say water body. If I was going to do, you notice it actually turn it on the water body layer on the map. And this is kind of a big landfill. It might be more than this. pictures or lines. So when we have something that's only represented by a point, getting that small acreage amount. But we do have things that are represented by polygons as well. So here with this autumn olive, it's adding up both the acres by that actual polygon plus the presence point times that 5-meter radius buffer. And so that gives you a total of 6.690. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. I know it has some complexity built into it, but because we feel like managers really need to have that power to determine how they want it to be calculated for them. Okay. I know that's a lot. Oh, one thing I did want to point out with this is with the affected area, everything is put to, if you have overlapping polygons, you're only going to see that calculation done once. It's only calculating the total coverage area. So if you have multiple things stacked up, it's not casting this over and over again. It's clipping it so that you just have one big polygon as opposed to like 5 overlapping polygons. So it doesn't overcount your total. Okay. So there we go. That was a lot. But at this point, I know we're close to time, but at this point we can open the floor up to more questions that anyone might have. Stop sharing. So, thank you.
These web map services. So the exports that Jen explained earlier and the map screenshots that I explained, those are all static, so they'll need to be updated once you've made them. So they work for like presentations and reports, but if you wanted to show something on your website, for instance, or if you want to be able to rerun an analysis, it's really useful to have these it's really useful to use the IMAP web map services. So the data is available as a web map service, which allows you to connect to IMAP data from your GIS software. So that could be your desktop software so you can run analyses. You can also create web maps and story maps to display live data on your website. There's examples on the left side. So there's web maps from NIAS-Info, and those are distribution maps for specific invasive species, and there's also the similar story map. And so that there's a lot that goes into using these web map services, but we do have some help resources for you. There's going to be more info on the site coming soon, but we do have a webinar recording from earlier this year that you can find on our YouTube channel. And there are also resources provided by Esri. And if you have any questions, you can email us at the email listed.